Let's make a delicious split pea soup using kosher salami, and we'll make some homemade croutons too. Sally that girl in the kitchen. Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Sally that girl in the kitchen. In today's episode, I'm going to teach you how to make split pea soup with kosher salami and homemade croutons. So, kosher salami, yes, we are going to use salami to give that split pea soup that traditional meaty undertone, and it's going to be divine. And we're going to top our soup with some homemade croutons. So if you follow my channel, you may know that I adore homemade no-knead artisan bread, because honestly, it's amazing, it's gorgeous, it turns out spectacular, and it's so easy. Well, I'm going to be using a bread that I released recently, which is my rosemary, olive oil, and sea salt no-knead artisan bread to make these croutons. So you can find that recipe on my channel if you want to make your croutons homemade. That's what I'm going to be using. And of course, no judgment if you decide to buy store-bought artisan bread, but I'm telling you, you can make this even a couple of days in advance, and once it's cool, just put it in a Ziploc bag and you have it ready for when it's time to make your soup. And as far as that soup, that kosher salami really elevates the flavor of this soup, and I'm telling you, with those homemade croutons on top, it's actually just transportive. It takes me back to this great deli that I used to go to when I used to work with my dad during my university years, and I would just count the days until we'd go there, because I would get the most delicious soup, and this is my version. So I'm super excited to teach you how to make it. So let's not wait another second, and let's get started. For the homemade crouton part of today's recipe, you will need 1/2 of a bowl of my rosemary, olive oil, and sea salt artisan bread. I will be sure to include the link to that recipe in the description area of this video. But of course, if you don't want to make your own bread, although I highly recommend it, you can pick up a crusty loaf of bread, sourdough, Italian, any nice crusty bread will do. You will also need 6 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil, 1½ teaspoons of garlic powder, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and some fresh ground black pepper to taste. And for the split pea soup with kosher salami part of today's recipe, you will need 6 ounces of kosher salami, which you should buy in bullet form, 2 tablespoons of parve, which is a non-dairy or a vegan margarine, 2 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil, 1 medium yellow onion, 3 pre-cut carrot sticks, and 2 pre-cut celery sticks. I will show those to you in a moment. I buy the pre-cut type of carrot sticks and celery sticks, but if you want to use a regular carrot and a regular rib of celery, then you'll need about 1/3 of a large carrot and just 1 rib from your stock of celery. You will also need 2 cloves of garlic, 4 cups of chicken broth, 3 cups of water plus another 1½ cups separate, 2 bay leaves, a few fresh sprigs of thyme, 1/4 teaspoon of ground black pepper, 14 ounces of green split peas, and 1/2 teaspoon of salt. You will also need a spoon, a ladle, and a wooden spoon, a medium and small bowl along with either a colander or a fine mesh sieve. You'll need a large baking tray and some parchment paper, a wet measuring cup, a scissor and some kitchen twine, and you'll need a cutting board and a few knives. I'm using a large knife, a long thin knife, and an offset bread knife. You'll also need some measuring spoons and some oven mitts, and you'll need either a Dutch oven with a lid or just a heavy soup pot with a lid. You want to make sure it's got a heavy bottom because you don't want to burn your soup as it will cook for a bit. And these are the carrot and celery sticks that I was referring to. I buy them in stick form, and these are the ones that I mentioned in the ingredients. So now that we have all of our ingredients and tools together, let's get started. So here's the beautiful bowl of rosemary, olive oil, and sea salt artisan bread that I'm going to be using for our croutons. We're going to be using half of this bowl, which is just a fancy way of saying a beautiful round loaf. So we're going to be making our croutons first. So the first thing you want to do is preheat your oven to 375 degrees, making sure you have a rack placed in the center. Then we're going to grab our beautiful rosemary, olive oil, and sea salt artisan bread, place it on a cutting board, and grab our bread knife. And then we're going to cut and use about half this loaf, but I'm going to cut off a piece because I really just want to show you what the inside of this bread looks like. It's beautiful and airy on the inside and has that gorgeous rosemary running throughout. It's going to be perfect for these croutons. So I went ahead and sliced that chunk, and then I cut off 2 more slices. Notice the thickness of the slices. You want nice thick slices, and then we're going to put this away so we can eat it. We're not going to use this half. So now what I like to do is I like to just cut some strips out of this thick slice of bread. And then, of course, I'm going to make cubes. I just turn the bread in the other direction, and then I just cut into cubes. I just want to show you about the size of cube that you are looking for. Super simple. With whatever type of bread you're using, you just want to cut it into small cubes because we want to toast these up and get them nice and flavorful. So once you've finished cubing up your bread, you're just going to put it in a medium-sized bowl, and we're going to add in some extra seasoning. So we're going to add 1.5 teaspoons of garlic powder. Then we'll add in 1/2 teaspoon of salt just to elevate that flavor just a bit. And then we're going to add some fresh ground pepper to taste. I like plenty of it, but feel free to use as much or as little as you'd like. And when that's in, you're going to come over with 6 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil, and you're going to drizzle that right over the top. And then you're going to come in with a large spoon, and you're just going to make sure to stir that well. You want to toss those little cubes and make sure that the seasonings are well distributed and that olive oil touches all of the little cubes. You'll notice that even the color changes a bit. So now they're ready to go, and I prepared a tray that I lined with some parchment paper, and I'm just going to bring those beautiful cubes over, and I'm going to lay them out on the parchment. And then I'm going to spread them out really well because you don't want them tight. You don't want them close together because you don't want them to steam. You want them to toast and get absolutely beautiful. So now they're ready to be placed in the oven on a center rack, and you're going to set a 7-minute timer to begin the cooking process. While my croutons are in the oven, I'm going to take advantage of the time and start prepping some of my other ingredients. So I started with my bullet. Mine was 12 ounces. I'm only using 6, so I cut it in half. And then I sliced it, and notice the thickness of those slices. And then I took each one and I cut it into small cubes. And this is going to really help flavor our soup. So you're going to repeat that for each of the slices. Let me show you just a little bit closer. You just want to cube it up, and then you want to add them into a small bowl and set them aside. So now the 7-minute timer has now gone off, and I've brought out my beautiful croutons, but they're not ready just yet. So what you want to do is using either a spatula or a wooden spoon, you just kind of want to stir these, and the idea is to get them golden on all sides. So you just want to mix them up a little bit and then spread them out once again before we pop them back into the oven a second time. So now very carefully, you're going to place them back into the hot oven, and they're going to cook for about another 8 minutes or until they're golden and toasty. Then you're going to bring them out, and they're looking beautiful, and they're nice and crispy and perfectly golden, and you're just going to let them cool right there on that tray. These guys are so flavorful. They're amazing on this soup, in a salad, or by themselves. They're so good. So now let's continue to prep to make our soup. The first thing you're going to want to do is to chop up your medium yellow onion, and we're going to chop up 2 cloves of garlic. The trick to a beautifully smooth soup is to mince these really well. Then we're going to grab our carrot sticks and our celery sticks, and we're going to be chopping those. So with our celery, you see it's about 1 rib or stalk of celery, depending on what you call it. And then what you want to do is you're going to peel off those threads from your celery. You can use your hands, or you can use a small knife and just peel the celery. And then what you want to do is chop it really fine. So you see, I took off all the peel, all the threads, and then I sliced my celery paper thin, like super, super thin. And then on top of that, I minced it really well. I want it really tiny. And then the carrots, I cut into really small cubes. So now the last thing we need to prep are our 14 ounces of green split peas. I've added them to a fine mesh sieve, but you can use a colander, and then just run cool water from the sink right over them. And you want to make sure to wash them well. You want to remove any dust, and then of course you want to inspect them and remove any foreign particles, any tiny little rocks. Just make sure they're nice and clean. So now we're going to bring over our Dutch oven or heavy pot with a lid, and we're going to start by browning that salami that we had cubed earlier. And what I do is I set my stove to medium heat. Remember, I'm using a heavy pot with a heavy bottom. And then I'm going to brown these up. So what I want to do is I want to release a little bit of the oils. I want to create those brown bits at the bottom of my pan, which really just mean flavor, incredible flavor. And of course, browning the salami, which we're going to add in later in the cooking process, is really going to elevate the flavor of this soup. So it's been cooking for about 5 minutes, so I'm going to remove the salami and place it back in the bowl, because that is going to be added in later in the cooking process. But now we've browned it, we have those beautiful brown bits on our pot, and we're ready to continue. So now we're going to add in 2 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil, and then we're also going to add 2 tablespoons of a Parve non-dairy vegan type margarine, and we're just going to let that melt real quick. My stove is still set to medium and the pot is quite hot, so I'm just going to move that margarine around, and then I'm going to bring in my finely chopped yellow onion. This is 1 medium yellow onion. And then I'm just going to make sure it gets infused with that delicious olive oil, that touch of margarine, and just kind of bring everything together. And what we're looking to do is sweat the onion. We're not browning it. We just want to sweat it for a few minutes, make it a bit translucent. This will take another maybe 4 minutes or so. So now we're going to bring over those 2 cloves of finely minced garlic, and we're going to add those in. And we're also going to go ahead and sweat that garlic maybe for about 2 minutes max. You don't want to brown it, you just want to sweat it just a touch. And then you're just going to mix it together with those beautiful onions. Now you're going to bring over your celery and carrots, and you're going to add that in. And then you're just going to cook those for a minute or 2. Now for our liquid, we're bringing over 4 cups of chicken broth, and you're going to add that in. So that's usually about a box of chicken broth, so I'm just going to pour the whole box right in. Then we're going to add 3 cups of water right on top of that. We're going to add 2 bay leaves and a few sprigs of fresh thyme that I tied together with some kitchen twine. I'll remove the bay leaves and the thyme at the end. And then I'm going to add a 1/4 teaspoon of some ground black pepper, my 14 ounces of green split peas that have been washed and checked. Just add all of those in. And then all we need to do is give this all a good stir, and we're going to allow it to come to a soft boil. So we've kept our heat on medium this whole time, and of course we added some room temperature liquids, so it's going to take a few minutes to come to a slow boil. But what we want to do is, once we get there and we see those bubbles starting to rise, that's when we're going to come in. We're going to put our lid on, but we are going to allow it to vent. So we are going to lower our heat to either low or a medium simmer if your stove has a simmer setting. And notice we did not add the salt or the salami. So now we're going to set a 45-minute timer to begin the cooking process. And then, of course, we have our beautiful croutons ready to go. I've served them in a little bowl. And now what's going to happen is you're going to come in about every 15 minutes or so, and you're going to give this a little stir. And then when the 45 minutes pass, you'll notice that the liquid has diminished. Our soup is getting nice and thick. We're going to give it all a nice stir. It's smelling amazing already. And now we're going to add the rest of the ingredients. So we're going to bring over that beautiful brown salami that we had prepared earlier. We're going to add all of that right in. And then, of course, mix it well. And this is when you're going to add in your 1/2 teaspoon of salt. It is said that if you add it in too early, the split peas don't break up as well and they stay harder, and this way you'll get a nice, creamy, smooth soup. That's why I add the salami back in at the end and the salt. So now I measured 1.5 cups of water, but I warmed it up in the microwave for about 2 minutes before adding it in, because we need the extra liquid, but we don't want to slow down that bubbling that we have going on. So by adding hot water, that way it keeps the soup bubbling. So what we want to do is just give it another really good mix. Make sure to incorporate that salt really well. And of course, you could have even tasted it before adding the salt. Maybe you don't believe it needs any. I like a little salt in it, but that's totally up to you. So now it's nice and incorporated, and of course it's gotten a little thinner, but it's going to thicken up again when we continue to cook it. So we're going to place our lid back on. I'm using an oven mitt, of course, because it's quite hot, and of course I'm remembering to let it vent. And then I'm going to set another timer, this time for 30 minutes, to allow it to finish cooking. Now remember, once again, to come in once or twice and give your soup a good stir. The reason we use a heavy pot is because, of course, we don't want the bottom of our soup to burn and ruin this beautiful, thick, amazing liquid that we are creating. So just give it a gentle stir and then put your lid back on, and then just let time and those wonderful ingredients work their magic. So now 30 minutes have passed and the soup is absolutely spectacular. It's thick and bubbly and smells amazing. It has those little pieces of kosher salami running throughout, and the onions and garlic have practically dissolved. And of course, we're going to fish out our bay leaves and our sprig of thyme that we tied up with some kitchen twine. And all we're going to be left with is this amazing, yummy, beautiful green split pea soup with kosher salami. And don't forget those amazing croutons that we have waiting to add on top. So now our soup is looking gorgeous. It's perfect. It's got the right thickness, and it's time to turn our stove off. So I was using that medium simmer, but either medium simmer or low, whatever you're using is fine. Just make sure to turn your stove off and you are good to go. Look at how gorgeous that soup looks. I wish you could smell it. It's phenomenal, and it's going to taste amazing with those gorgeous croutons that we created on top. It's just absolutely beautiful, stunning, filling, satisfying, hearty, And I'm telling you that kosher salami is really something. It makes it really, really special. So now, of course, I've served myself a bowl. It's still steamy the way I like it. And then, of course, we have to add our beautiful croutons on top because, yeah, that's part of the magic. I'm going to add a few, well, maybe more than a few, just a nice sprinkle of them because they're just absolutely delicious. And then I'm going to get to try it. And I'm telling you, this soup is just one of those foods that brings back an amazing memory. Plus, it's so delicious, it's a win-win. So it's important to note that this soup will thicken upon standing and upon cooling. So if you serve it right away, it's absolutely perfect as is. But if you've let it cool or let it sit or store any leftovers, you may need to add some water to it to dilute it a bit because it will thicken up. And of course, if you do encounter that situation, be sure to taste it after you add the additional liquid to make sure it doesn't need any additional salt. So now, look at those gorgeous croutons. I just wanted to show you they're crispy and of course take advantage of putting another one in. They're just perfect for this soup, and this is the way I ate it as a young woman, and I just absolutely love it every time I make it. It's just so, so delicious. I got a little bit of everything. Perfection. It's so tasty with that yummy homemade crouton, those little pieces of salami. And as I said, the onions and garlic practically disappear. They just completely break apart. And even the carrots, just tiny little pieces are left. Amazing, amazing. This is so good. It's a meal in and of itself. Or, of course, you can serve a small cup of this before a sandwich. This with like an amazing tuna sandwich or even your favorite deli meat sandwich. So crazy good. And just that consistency. It's creamy and just filling. Delicious is an understatement. Insanely good. So how crazy good does all of this look? I don't even know where to start. Those croutons, amazing, savory, infused with that olive oil. It's got that rosemary running throughout, that extra garlic that we put on top. Like totally divine. You can use them for this soup or you can make them anytime, and they're great in salad. They're spectacular. The problem around here is making sure that my boys, and I always refer to my boys, but they are young men, much taller than me, and the biggest problem is making sure that they don't eat them all before it's time to serve our salad or serve our soup because they're that good. And the soup, don't even get me started. It is phenomenal. It is exactly what you would want in a great split pea soup, the kind you'd get served at a great deli. Just spectacular. That kosher salami really does the trick, and it has those flavors. You don't even feel the little pieces of carrot and celery and onion running throughout because we cut that all real fine, and it just almost dissolves into the mix, and it just creates the most amazing split pea soup. So I know that you are going to love this. Trust me. No, better yet, don't trust me. You're going to have to try to make this recipe yourself. And of course, if you've enjoyed today's recipe, don't forget to like it, to write me a sweet comment, to share the recipe, share it with yourself so you can come back to it later, share it with your friends, and just keep the love going. And of course, if you're not already subscribed here to Sally That Girl in the Kitchen on YouTube, be sure to subscribe and to touch that little notification bell because I'm constantly putting out new recipe videos. I try to put one out at least every week, and there's just so many up on my channel, I've lost count. I think there's over 200 at this point. Just so many different recipes, breads, soups, main dishes, side dishes, desserts, my Sephardic Turkish recipes, which is what I'm most known for. But there's just so many different recipes from around the world. I just choose what I really love to eat, and I make it, and I teach you how to make it. That's what this channel is all about, just sharing the love. So thank you for being with me. And of course, if you're not following me on social media, you can find me as Sally That Girl in the Kitchen on Facebook, Instagram, and on Pinterest. And you can find me as Sally That Girl FL on Twitter, Snapchat, and on TikTok. And don't forget about my Sally That Girl in the Kitchen Amazon store. You can always find that link on the banner of my YouTube channel if you're watching on a computer or an iPad. And I also have it pinned at the top of my Facebook page and my Instagram page for your convenience. And of course, you can always message me through Facebook or Instagram, through my Sally That Girl in the Kitchen pages. If you can't find something, I'm happy to share it with you. So I just want to take a moment to thank you so much for watching. And as I always say, I'll see you next time. Sally That Girl in the kitchen.